Imagine it for a moment. You're alone, completely alone. There's no firewood, no rescue. There's no voice but your own thoughts, echoing off the frozen wind. The sun rises at 3 a.m. and never warms your skin. Your last companion lies buried in snow. All you can hear are cracking sheets of ice and hungry polar bears circling your tent. You're not an explorer. You're not a soldier. You're a 25-year-old woman, a seamstress, sent to this death trap because people assumed wrongly that your native blood made you fit for the cold. But when starvation, grief, and frostbite came for everyone else, you were the one who endured, alone, for almost 2 entire years. And they almost forgot your name. Welcome to the Forgotten File, where we bring you the untold true stories of ordinary people who survived. The impossible land who history nearly left behind. Today we journey back to the frozen edge of the world, Wrangel Island, 1923, and step into the impossible true story of Ada Blackjack, a mother with no training, no weapons, and no help, who stared down the Arctic and lived to tell the silence. This is Alone on the Ice, Ada Blackjack's Arctic Vigil. Our story begins far from the Arcticon, the windy edges of Nome, Alaska coastal town dotted with fishermen's shacks, sled dogs, and wooden piers that crack in the cold. In 1921, the people of Nome were used to hardship. But for one young woman named Ada Blackjack, life had been particularly cruel. She was only 25 years old, already a widow, and already a mother. Her husband, an abusive man, had died years earlier. She now struggled to care for their only son, Benita boy, with severe health problems. Ada was Inupiat, indigenous Alaskan. But she didn't grow up in a traditional village. She had been raised by missionaries at an orphanage, separated from her culture, her language, even her family. She wasn't a hunter. She didn't know how to trap or fish. Her only real skill was sewing, sealing up cold weather clothing with thick, waterproof stitches that could keep out the worst of winter. Ada was quiet, timid, and terribly poor. When her son needed medicine she couldn't afford, and no one would hire her, Ada made a desperate decision. A Canadian explorer showed up in town, posting notices. Expedition to Wrangel Island. Women welcomed. $50 a month. Sewing skills encouraged. Ada didn't know much about Wrangel Island. She'd never even seen a map. But $50 was money she'd never touched before. Enough to get her son treatment and food. Enough to keep him from being sent to an orphanage. So, Ada Blackjack, shy, afraid, but determined, signed on. She packed her Bible, a few photos of her son, some heavy boots, stepped onto a ship that would change her life forever. The man behind the expedition was Vilhjalmur Stefansson, famous polar explorer, known for bold claims and reckless planning. He wanted to claim Wrangel Island, an icy land far north of Siberia, and plant a British-Canadian colony there. His plan was this: send a small group of young men to survive there for 2 years, prove the island was livable, then convince nations to fight over it. It was risky, dangerous, and Ada didn't know any of this. The group was small. 4 men, all around Ada's age. One Inupiat cat named Vic. An aide there too, sew clothes, cook meals, and keep the camp civilized. The men said they'd be fine. They had guns, they had supplies. Stefansson had promised a ship would return in 1 year to bring them home. They smiled, posed for photographs in their thick coats, and waved goodbye to Nome Harbor. But none of them, not Ada, not the scientists, not even Stefansson, understood the horror they were sailing straight into. They thought it would be a short adventure, just 1 winter on the ice. Then home, with fame and payment waiting. But the island was not empty. The food they brought wouldn't last. And Ada? Ada would soon be the last one left, alive, facing the entire Arctic alone. The ship dropped anchor in icy waters off the unmapped coast of Wrangel Island, far above the Siberian Arctic Circle. The expedition team loaded dogs, crates, rifles, and food onto rowboats, then pushed toward the shore. This wasn't an island you found on postcards. It was windswept, rocky, and nearly lifeless. No trees, no real shelter. Just snow, ice, fog, and cliffs. They were hundreds of miles from the nearest human being. Still, hopes were high at first. The leader of the group, Alan Crawford, just 20 years old, believed they'd be fine. He told the group they could trap foxes for fur, hunt seals on the shore, and wait it out until the relief ship returned. They set up a canvas tent, unpacked supplies. For the first few weeks, life was survivable. Introduce the team. Alan Crawford, the young Canadian in charge, ambitious, stubborn, and wildly unprepared. Milton Gall, a cheerful Texan, the team's mechanic and photographer. Fred Moorer, the oldest, calm and experienced. He had survived a previous Arctic trip with Stephenson. Lorne Knight, strong, confident, and slowly growing sick. And finally, Ada Blackjack, 25 years old. Quiet, watching, sewing parkas in the corner of the tent, while the men argued over maps. In the beginning, Ada was treated like a housemaid. She cooked, cleaned, mended clothes, and was expected to stay out of the men's way. They teased her for not knowing how to shoot a rifle. They ignored her when she warned storms were coming based on cloud patterns. One of them even wrote in his journal, "She doesn't do much, mostly sits idly and prays." They didn't realize that quiet prayer would carry her further than any of them. As October turned to November, daylight vanished. The sun barely rose above the horizon. Their food supplies began to dwindle much faster than expected. Trapping was far harder than Stephenson claimed. The foxes were smarter. The weather was worse, worst of all the relief ship, which had promised to resupply them with food and equipment, never arrived. Sea ice had blocked the coast. No one was coming. As temperatures dropped below -40, doubt began to settle in. For Ada, isolation took on a deeper weight. She missed her son. She wrote letters she couldn't send. She began sleeping with her Bible under her coat, afraid if she died in the night, no one would bury her properly. The men began to change, too. The tension grew tight and bitter. Arguments became common. One of them, Knight, was suffering silently from the early signs of scurvy. Ada's journal said, "They laugh when I pray.
Ow.
They say no one's listening, but I must believe someone is, because I cannot bear this alone." Now the team faced their second Arctic truth. Not dying of cold, but slowly of hunger. The foxes disappeared. The seals vanished. By late January, they were rationing half a biscuit a day and chewing leather to trick their stomachs. Then, in the frozen silence, the men made a decision that would doom most of them. By March, it was clear they were not going to be rescued. The year's supply of food was nearly gone. The weather brutally cold. Lorne Knight, once strong, always laughing, was now too sick to sit up. Scurvy had taken hold. His legs were swollen. He could barely eat. Ada did what she could, boiling seal meat, making weak broth. But she didn't have medicine or training, like Courageous. A growing fear that she might soon be left alone. On March 28th, the three remaining men, Crawford, Mora, and Gall, made a plan. They would try to walk across the sea ice, all the way to Siberia. It was a desperate gamble. 700 kilometers of frozen ocean. No trail, no map. No backup, just sled dogs, sleeping bags, and what hope they had left. They told Ada they'd send help as soon as they reached a Russian village, that the ice might only take 2 or 3 weeks to cross. But Ada felt something deeper. Ada's journal. "I fear I will never see them again. I don't want to be alone here. God help me." She packed warm furs around Knight, folded their old clothes, watched the three men walk into the fog, and then silence. Days passed, then weeks. Ada and the weakened Lorne Knight were the only humans left on Wrangel Island. Knight's condition got worse. He cried out at night, delirious from pain and starvation. He begged Ada to give him her rifle so he could end it. But Ada refused. Ada said, "I told him no. God would help us if we just waited." So she stayed by his side, cooked when she could, fought off polar bears with the same rifle, held on to life while the Arctic tried to steal it from her. Once a massive polar bear broke into camp, sniffing for food. She fired near its head to scare it off. When the bullet jammed, she swung a stick, screaming until it fled. That night, she sat by the oil lantern, sobbing. Weeks turned into months. April became May, then July. Over 100 days since the men had vanished. No word, no help. The Arctic ice had swallowed them whole. On June 23rd, Lorne Knight died quietly in his sleeping bag. Ada knelt beside him and prayed. Then she buried him on a hill overlooking the silence. Ada's diary. Lorne Knight died this morning. I tried everything. I did all I could. Now I am alone. Imagine it. 25 years old. A seamstress with no weapons, no training, no survival book. Living alone on a frozen island with nothing but wind and memory, hundreds of miles from the rest of the world. No idea if anyone was still coming to save her. Yet every day Ada woke up, cooked seal meat, collected driftwood, wrote in her journal, and survived as the ice cracked, as the seals disappeared. As the sun dipped lower, ready for another winter, Ada is now completely alone. She had no maps, no compass, no plans, just a tent, a rifle, and 24 hours of daylight stretching endlessly across the tundra. From this moment, every step she took, every breath she drew, every second she stayed alive, it was all up to her. Ada, the seamstress from Nome, became her own lifeline. She learned to shoot the rifle with accuracy out of necessity. She set traps in the tundra, hunted birds and foxes, and even built protection against the cold winds using driftwood and canvas. She reinforced her tent with fur scraps and stitched together custom boots using the remains of old supplies, a skill that would have meant nothing unless she got everything else right first. She carved signal markers in the snow, just in case a passing ship entered the cove. She boiled meat and collected rainwater. And every evening, she wrote updates and prayers in her little diary, talking to herself and to God, so she wouldn't lose her mind. Ada's journal. I do what I can every day. I clean camp, I fix whatever breaks, I pray and cook. I keep hoping that someone will come. And then the polar bears returned. Massive, silent, and always watching. They weren't curious anymore. They were hungry. One night, a bear tore through her supply tent. It broke open the seal meat, shredded her bags. Worst of all, it nearly crushed one of the only sleds she had left. Ada said, I shouted and fired. The bear ran, but I didn't sleep that night. After that, she kept the rifle next to her bedroll, and she lined the camp with sticks and rocks so she could hear them coming. July passed, then August. The endless sun began to sink. That meant just one thing. Another Arctic winter was coming. And she didn't even know if her rescue ship remembered she was here. Her early hope began to flicker. She patched up her coat again, sewed an extra pair of mittens, prepared mentally for a third winter. Alone, the body can survive a lot, but the mind, the soul, that's where long survival becomes impossible unless you find a reason to go on. For Ada, that reason was her son. Every morning, she saw his face in her dreams. Every night, she promised herself, I must live for Bennett. He needs me. I must come back. I must. She did not know that after almost 2 years, someone was finally coming. On the morning of August 20th, 1923, the sound came like thunder over the waves, a rescue ship, the Donaldson. After 23 months, it reached Wrangel Island with Russian permission. A crew member spotted movement from afar, a small figure waving on the bluff. Ada looked nothing like she had in Nome. Her hands were cracked, her hair grayed at the edges, and yet she stood firm, rifle in one hand, journal in the other. They found her calm, but thin and quiet. She helped the men gather the camp's remains, collected Knight's grave marker with care. Ada's words, I am ready to go home now. She had spent 2 Arctic winters alone, fought off wild animals, nursed a dying man, buried him, and stayed alive. Against odds no explorer or soldier ever faced without fanfare or recognition. She didn't just survive Wrangel Island, she conquered it. When Ada Blackjack returned to Nome, she didn't speak, not at first. She was met with reporters, flashbulbs, headlines. Some hailed her as the female Robinson Crusoe. Others called her lucky. Some didn't believe she'd truly survived alone for nearly 2 years, fighting off bears, starvation, and madness. But Ada didn't care about stories. All she wanted was to find her son. Before the expedition, Ada had been promised $50 a month in wages. That's what she signed up for. It's why she risked everything. But the man who sent her to Wrangel Island, the flashy Canadian explorer, Vilhjalmur Stephenson, the one who funded the trip, never paid her. In interviews, he praised the men who died and barely mentioned Ada. In private, he claimed she had done her duty and nothing more. She was hired to sew, he wrote. she did not deserve special attention. For all her suffering, Ada would never receive medals. No government paycheck, no national gratitude, just silence. Again, Ada used what little money she got from the press appearances to get Bennett medical care. It was all she cared about. For a brief time, things looked hopeful, but life was not done testing her. Years later, Bennett died as a young man of tuberculosis. Her only son, her reason for surviving Wrangel Island, gone. And with that, Ada disappeared from public view. She lived quietly for the rest of her life. No husband, no riches, no revenge. Just calm patience and dignity. In 1983, she died at the age of 85 in Palmer, Alaska. Her grave is simple. Most people who pass it never know what she endured, but history remembers now. She left behind a detailed diary, a delicate record of pain, silence, and strength. It wasn't loud. It wasn't heroic in the way people expected, but it was real, pure survival, day by day, breath by breath. A reminder that sometimes the quietest people bear the greatest weight and carry it farther than anyone else could. Long overshadowed by those who died, Ada Blackjack was the only one who made it through. Not with glory, not with pride, but with grace. Ada Blackjack wasn't a hero in the way papers printed. She was something rarer, a woman no one believed in, who never gave up. And even though the Arctic tried to bury her, she came back. That's not just survival, it's legacy. Ada Blackjack's voice nearly vanished into history, but she matters. So if her journey touched you like this video, subscribe to The Forgotten File, and most of all, share her name, so that the world will never forget the woman who walked alone on the ice and came back stronger.